the bottom of what felt like, it felt like an ocean without water. But when I looked to the top, I can see a light and I could see waves. So it's like, here's a light.
Hello, family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name is Betty, and today I'm joined by Yandea. And I feel super bad for everybody because we weren't recording our 20-minute getting to know each other thing beforehand. And we talked about so many things. I'm super excited for your willingness to serve our community today at IANDS. And I'm just going to toss it right over to you. Thanks so much.
Well, yes, I do wish that that was recorded because we did talk about some really nice topics. My name is Yandea, as you mentioned, and pretty much ever since I was a little girl, ever since I could actually remember, I've been having spiritual experiences. My grandfather, he was what we would call a healer. Some people will call them shaman. We just call them healers. He was a healer. My great grandmother, his mother, was also a seer and a healer. And I guess that's how the gifts pass down. That's what I was told anyways, right? And so, yeah, I've just been, ever since I was younger, seeing certain things, having dreams, having the ability to heal, feel energy, a lot of that sort of stuff. And a little bit of seeing, having visions, right? And not understanding at a young age that other people didn't have that, because pretty much everyone in my between my grandparents, all of their children, my aunts and uncles, all have different gifts. So I kind of thought it was regular until I realized that it wasn't, which was probably around age 10, having conversations in the schoolyard, and you realize that, other people aren't having those sort of dreams, and being able to see future things and such. So that was basically, my childhood. And then at around age 12, I had an experience where I was going to do something. I was going to do something really bad. I was going to have a girl who was bullying me. I was going to have her physically hurt, let's put it that way, by some other people. We could get more into details of that another time. And I just had to make one phone call to kind of arrange for things to happen. And that was like my earliest dark time, of my own self, where it wasn't me seeing somebody else being dark, but actually experiencing like real fear and, just like wanting to survive and feeling like if I went back to school, I would, probably get beat up or something. So my idea was to, have this girl beat up before I got beat up. And so, anyways, that day, when I was to call back my other friend with the address of the girl so that she could get, violently dealt with, I ended up, like, there's a TV in the room that I was in, and that TV, it just didn't work. It's one of those TVs where you have to like turn the knob, like way back, way back, and it has like an antenna and all of those things. And it was on a channel that didn't work. And all of a sudden, the screen just got clear. The screen just got clear, and there was a man talking on the screen, and he was saying that there's someone out there, that God was telling him that there was someone out there who's about to do something really bad and that they were going to regret it. And I was listening, but when he got to the place of saying, I want to pray for you, put your hand on the screen and touch my hand. So he kind of stretched his hand out like that and said, touch my hand. My body just went towards I just stretched out towards the TV. And I found that I had been crying, like my face was soaked, my nose was running, like I didn't even realize I had been crying. It just kind of felt like I was in a bit of a daze or a trance, like watching the man. And so I knew that he was talking to me somehow. I felt that he was. And I called the number on the screen and I said, yeah, that was me. I was gonna have something really bad happen to this girl and whatever. And then they pretty much told me I had to find a church. And then from there, I started having literally like after that conversation with the people on the phone, I said, Mom, this is what happened. Everybody knew that TV didn't work. So it was kind of a miracle anyways. So she said, I'm going to find someone who could bring you to church because my mother didn't go to church. And so she found someone, and that person was like friend of a relative. And so pretty much that night I went to sleep and I started having prophetic dreams about what we would call the end of the world. But it's not really the end of the world or the earth. It's just the changing of systems. But I had these dreams, and the first one was about forgiveness. I had two dreams that night. One was about forgiveness, and the other one was about actually seeing what would happen. And I had a vision. There was just like a lot of, there was a vision in the dream of lots of arguments, you know, fighting, protesting between different groups of people. I saw a lot of, and this back then, because I'm 41 now, so I was like around 13 years old, I think, when that happened, 12 or 13 when that happened. And so back in that time, we didn't really have like a lot of you know, transsexual people or I guess gay people, right? Like homosexual people back in that time. It wasn't, you saw like one or two, but in that dream, there were so, and I never forget that there were so many of them. I was like, what is going on? As a little girl, I'd never seen this before. And there were a lot of protesting and fighting between peoples. Anyways, that was very significant to me because it was very different from the world that I was living in. It was like a different social thing. And I always kept that in the back of my mind. Like when I would see this happening in real life, I would know that the time of whatever I'm seeing is close. So anyways, I had a vision in that dream that I basically saw the sky coming together, like all the clouds coming together and twirling, making something like a tornado and coming down. And then I kind of went up into it. So I woke up when I had that. I was trying to see who was in the clouds, who was this great bright light. And I ended up opening up my eyes instead of seeing, you know, in the dream. I ended up opening my eyes in real life. And I got a phone call from this woman, and name was Anita. And she was the person who my mom ended up getting in touch with to bring me to church. And I told her, she said, like, how was your sleep? And I said, you know, I had nightmares. And I told her what they were, and she said, those aren't nightmares, these are prophetic. You have the gift of prophecy. And I didn't know what the hell this lady was talking about. But she told me that, and she said her daughter had had the same dreams when she said when she had gotten saved. And so I was like, what does that mean? You know, I knew none of this lingo. And so she said that she would bring me a painting that her daughter did of that vision, and that I should do the same thing. And so I just went outside. I love being outside. I love painting. I grabbed what I had, and I did my painting. She came through that same day, and she showed me her daughter's painting, and my painting and her daughter's painting were identical, same colors, same exact thing. So kind of from that time, I knew that I wasn't, you know, like I knew that something was accurate about whatever was happening to me, but I still never had, you know, anything more than that. And so I ended up going to church with her, and in going to church with her, um, I saw a lot. I saw a lot of things. I saw people having, you know, spiritual experiences, but I was able to, for whatever reason, I was able to see through, you know, like people speaking in tongues. Some people do really speak in tongues and it's legitimate, but then there are others who it's absolutely not something that you would want, you know, to have. It's not good. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, and I was able to understand, you know, I had the interpretation of tongues, and this is stuff she was telling me because I was like, well, I understand what that lady is saying. It was not English, but I could understand it. And so she was kind of the one who guided me in identifying myself and what was happening to me with like things from the Bible. So that summer, I think it was like, yeah, summer's like 2 months break. I read the entire Bible from front to back. There was a blue light, a little ball of blue light, like an actual ball, not just like a 2D. It was a 3D little ball that would come, and it would just follow on, you know, under the sentences on the Bible, and it would disappear. I would turn the pages, it would reappear, and then I would just read, and I was understanding what I was learning. And I would go to church and I would ask questions about what I had learned, and the pastors had no idea what I was talking about. So it's like the spirit was showing me the Spirit was showing me that, there's just a lot of corruption happening, in the organized religion. And so from that young age, as much as I followed Christianity in a sense, I always knew I learned it a different way. And I always knew that something was off with how the message of Yeshua compared to the doctrines that the church had created in order to indoctrinate people, and control their spirituality. So I kind of always had that, because my beginning with Christianity and the Bible and Yeshua was just very different from other people. Eventually that led to being, how would you say, demonized by the church in some sense, right? Because basically people were saying, well, if you had these gifts, before being baptized, then it's not from God. It's like you could only have these gifts if you could only have these gifts after you've been baptized. So if you're born with these gifts, then it's not from God. And it didn't make sense to me, because there are a lot of people who have gifts in the Bible and they didn't, say the sinner's prayer, or this type of stuff. So that's kind of what I was dealing with. And even if there's scriptures to back up my experience as credible, it just wasn't fitting with the doctrines, of the church. And so I found myself having to dig, really deep in, meditation and prayer, and just trust this Spirit that had guided me through this way. And that's just kind of how my life has been. So I don't consider myself to be really of any religion. I believe I am a follower of the way, is what I would say. I'm a follower of the way. I love the message of Yeshua. I love everything about Yeshua. And so, I feel that we have the same message, and anybody who has that message, I consider us family, brothers, sisters, and in the same page. And so that kind of ties into, I guess, the message of love, which is what I have just always been talking about, but even more so now. In January of 2024, so earlier this year, I experienced, on January 15th, I experienced a miscarriage. Now, I was shown in August of 2023 that I was going to die. But I wasn't really gonna die. It's just like it was gonna be like an old life, passing away sort of a thing. The guilt, the shame, all of this of whatever was gonna be gone. And then, but I was gonna experience death, but just not die. And it would have that effect on me. And so I didn't really take it as a physical dying. I still thought that it was gonna be, just like an experience, like a spiritual experience. And so I never took that in. But after having the near-death experience and I don't even like that word near-death, I rather closer to life, after having that experience in January where I lost over 40% of my blood through hemorrhaging and this miscarriage, yeah, very different from all the other spiritual experiences I've had where I've gotten to, the invisible wall. There's different areas when a soul is passing through. And I've had all these other experiences, but this one was real in the sense that my body was actually dying. Like I was actually experiencing a physical death. And so what happened basically was that I started hemorrhaging and I started bleeding, and then I went to the hospital. We told them what was happening. We ended up waiting like 3.5 hours before they even took me in. And at that point, when I went into the private room there, that's when I ended up miscarrying the baby. And I was sent home after that. I think the doctor just did like a abdominal ultrasound, not an internal one, just abdominal. And then she said, yep, it is a miscarriage. You could come back tomorrow and we'll do internal exam and all of this stuff. But she let me go. And so before I even left the hospital, I ended up going to the washroom. And that's when I started feeling my fingers getting cold, my feet getting cold. I couldn't feel them anymore. I started trying to walk to come out of the washroom. And my husband thankfully was waiting outside. So I ended up collapsing into his arms, and there was a chair there, so he put me on the chair. But the next thing I knew was I was sitting, like not sitting, but I was, well, I didn't have a body, but I was down as far down as it, not laying down, but I was down in the bottom of what felt like, it felt like an ocean without water, if you understand what I mean. I was under water, but not in, I couldn't feel liquid. But when I looked to the top, I can see a light and I could see waves. So it's like, here's a light and then there's waves, you know? So that gave me the feeling like I was looking through water, but I couldn't actually feel water. So anyways, it was all dark, pitch dark there. And I just wanted to go up to the light. I could see my husband on the other side of the waves. And so I knew that he was in another place and I wanted to get to him. So I went up to him. I didn't swim. I just kind of used my mind. I went up to him and I tried to get through the other side and I just couldn't cross the barrier. And I didn't know how to get over to where he was. I kept trying different things and I couldn't get over. Eventually, I got so tired that I just went back down to the bottom. And at that point, I think what's important with that incident is like he couldn't see me, but I could see him. I could also perceive everything else that was happening in the hospital. Although I couldn't see it, I knew like a male nurse was coming towards me. I couldn't see it. I just knew what was happening in his realm. And anyways, after the next thing I knew, I heard the nurse saying, "Are you coming back? Are you coming back?" Like this sort of thing. And then I was back. It felt like I was just waking up from like a dream, like, you know, opening my eyes slowly. And then I came back, I could start feeling my body again. They put me like on a stretcher. They took my, what's it called, my blood pressure. And then they were like, okay, you're good. You could leave now, but you have to go into like a, what's it called, wheelchair. And so they put me in, I went into a wheelchair and then I went into my car, went home. By the time I got home, it was like the next day. So it was January 16th. And that's really when everything got really intense. I already thought what had happened to me was very intense, but now I was home, I was on my couch with my husband, and I think he was like making something for us to, you know, for me to eat or something. He was doing something in the kitchen and we were just talking, but then he 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 came to me and I was telling him like I'm feeling like more like I'm bleeding heavily. Like this is really when like the hemorrhaging started, like very terrible. I mean, like nothing I'd ever experienced or seen before. I'm not going to go into details. It would be graphic, but any woman on earth would know something is wrong. This is not supposed to be happening. This is right. And so you know, he saw what was happening and he said, you know, maybe we should move you over to be more comfortable, to go to the bedroom. And I don't even remember like how far I got. I think I just attempted to raise myself off the couch and it was like all the blackness was coming back. I was feeling all the things I felt in the hospital before I passed out. And I said to him, it's happening again. And I remember just holding on to the back of the couch because I could feel my spirit just drawing out of me. Like my life was just like just leaving me. I was holding on to the couch. And then I started having the experiences on the other side. So when I went to the other side at that point is when I saw my life review, right? I saw from the time I came to this planet all the way up until that time. And it was looking like just in a black space, not really a room, but you know, everything was contained within that space. I didn't see God, but you know how people say, like, did you see? No, I didn't see anybody. There was no figures, no beings, you know, physical beings with me, anything like that. But there was a presence with me that I would call this presence God. That's like the presence that I felt all my life. So I would call that presence God. Just behind me, just with me, never, it wasn't like a bright light or anything, just with me in this place. I wasn't afraid to be in this place. Actually, that place was so familiar. I knew exactly what was going to happen in this place. It was something I had done many times before. And so I kind of was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I knew what was going to happen. And I saw frames of my life just being like this, like brought in front of me. And if you could just think of little kind of like rectangular frames of light, but I could see it's like the frames were alive. Like I could, or not alive, but like I could see, you know, pictures. It wasn't just still pictures. It was like my visions of my life, you know what I mean? Going, and I could see it, and everything was great. Everything was beautiful. I was doing lots of great things. And then it came to the place where my life was going to be, I say going to be weighed, because that's what it felt like. It was going to be weighed. And instead of having what I would call a good review, it was one where everything just disappeared. Like it just came together. Instead of being weighed, it just came together and like collided and just vanished. And I said, wow, wait a minute, that's not supposed to happen. I don't think I'd ever experienced that happening before. And I thought to myself, maybe it's because everything I did that was good, I was doing it through higher self. So maybe it's not counting, because, you know, it's all spirit. So, but then I had a thought like, but wait a minute, I chose to be a vegetarian. I'm like, that counts. That counts. That has to count for something, because that's like an actual, you know, physical, you're choosing that. And it is a type of a sacrifice, because let's be real, food tastes really good. And, you know, just eating vegetables alone, you have to have some seasonings and different things, you know what I mean? To really enjoy. So anybody who decides to just be on a strictly plant-based diet, especially if you are from a culture where there's a heavy, you know, just all these different foods, it is, you know, a type of it is, you're giving up something, you know, for a reason. And a good reason, right? And so I was kind of confused, like, why is this not worth something? Like almost like, why am I not getting points for this one? You know, that type of feeling. And as soon as I had that thought, here comes the truth, you know, like my conscience is there. Like the fact that you would have that thought just shows you how how wrong it is, and why you have no quote unquote points for this action. Like your heart is not. And the thing is that I had, at that point, I had been plant-based for 12 years. I mean, so many people had become plant-based because, let's say, through my influence or whatever the case is. But what happened is just that throughout the years, it just, maybe the first maybe 3 or 4 years, my heart was like totally in it, being very conscious. But what happened is that over time, it just became a thing. You know, it's just like, you know, you don't eat at these restaurants, you don't do this, you know, there's things that people say, um, you know, it just becomes almost like a religion, you know, without even realizing it. You just become, it's just religious. It's, your heart is not, you're just doing the duty of it, and your heart is not really actually there. So you're not doing anything really more to make sure animals are okay. Your duty is just, well, I don't eat meat and I don't wear leather, you know, whatever else, and you're good to go. So you've given yourself a check mark as I've done something to show that I care about these other beings. And you just move on with your life, and that's what you're going to do until the day you die. And that was shown to me, you know, that what's the sense of doing actions if it's not always done in love? You can't just automatically. Love is something that you have to be present in every moment. You're present, you know? So I understood that in that moment, you know, why that action and that way of life wasn't beneficial, as far as like increasing your consciousness, or, you know, that sort of thing, raising your vibration. Anyways, and then, so I kept going back and forth, right? From like the spiritual realm into present life. And my husband, like, at this point, he's on the phone with the paramedics and, not the paramedics, like the 911, the dispatcher. And I'm just going in and out, back and forth, and understanding different things. But I know I'm dying. I could feel like I can't hold on to this side anymore. And then, so finally, um, another thing that happened, I guess I should share, is that um, I went back to the same place, and this time I saw so many people. There were people there. There was so many people, I couldn't even count the amount of people, but they're all people I'd had encounters with in some way. And so to the furthest away from me, like all the way to the back, if we had to pretend it was a room, let's just say as far as your eye could see, there were people there, but they were all dim, and they weren't in physical form. Everything was lights, right? So but I could know, because it's like light has a signature, right? So every being that was there, like I could look at the light and I know, oh, that's my husband, and that's my, this son, that son. I could know that this is my family here. And so closest to me were the brightest lights right in front of me, and further back were the dimmest lights. And then, obviously those brighter coming closer and closer. And I knew that the people who were furthest back were people who I didn't have, I'll put it this way, there wasn't much love between me and them. It didn't matter how long I knew the person for, it was just like, was there love, there? And the least love appeared as dim light, and the most love appeared as brightest lights. And I got a chance, like when I was standing in front of my family who were closest to me, and really standing in front of them and feeling the light, feeling the warmth. And I knew that it was love. I knew that it was life. I knew, just the more I stood in front and felt it and took it in, is the more I was understanding all of what love was. And so I understood that love was the essence of all things, that all things were created through love and by love. And then with that understanding, I wanted to make more love. I wanted to help to make more love. And then what ended up happening was I was being pulled. I started being like pulled away. Like they were standing here and I just was being pulled back. And this place has no time or anything, but for me, the duration felt like 8 years. I don't know why, but it felt like 8 years. And I could tell, like after 8 years, my family would stop feeling that essence of love, but they would remember me. So they would have a memory of me, but that feeling, that feeling that you have when you love somebody, it's like almost tangible. I could tell that that would start going away after 8 years. Like they wouldn't be able to sense my presence. And so that's when I realized, like, love is presence, love is presence, love is attention. Love, like I said, it's the essence of all things. It's physical and non-physical, it's everything. And so at that point, I also was able to know, but this feeling that I'm feeling, this love, I felt this before. I felt this when maybe I'm dealing with a client and someone who's on the other side ends up, showing up. That's the feeling that I feel. It's intense, whatever this was. I just never called it love, but it was, I would just say, oh, a very high vibration, very high frequency. And then I would get a message. The message would always be one of love towards the person who had come to me. But at that moment, being there on the other side is when I was like, oh, wow, this is love. This is love. And I got the understanding that if we have love and make love with people, it is like an eternal cord that cannot be broken. So we have to make love. We have to spend our life being in love, because love is eternal and love doesn't die, when you make real love. So I, at that point, came back into my body again, and I was just saying, to my husband, pray, like we have to pray. We have to pray. You got to pray that I come back, and I was just asking him to pray. I also was had recorded something, because I did feel like I may not make it. I honestly felt like I was gonna die. I honestly did. The praying thing was like last resort, because I said, get out. I need to record a message for the children. I have 5 children, and being on that side, I was able to know certain things. And so I just wanted to leave them, messages. So I recorded something for each of the children. And then I said to him, just pray. Because at this time, I'm just going in back and forth. Even when you listen to the recording that I left for the children, it's like I'm talking to one child and then I'm out and I'm back again. Like I was just in and out of it. So he prayed. He told me he would pray, and I just went. I couldn't hold on anymore, and I went back to the other side. And then the next thing I know, I was opening my eyes, and the paramedics they had arrived at my house. And so they brought me to the hospital. There was a great doctor there. She realized I had not been examined. She checked me and she removed what was causing the issue. And my bleeding like stopped, you know, not stopped all the way, but it definitely subsided greatly. And so since that time, like I was sent home, and it took a long time for me to, well, it took, for me, it's a long time, like 2 weeks, you know, just laying in bed. And I couldn't even really walk from like I have a washroom inside my bedroom. I couldn't even walk like from my bed to the washroom without feeling like I was gonna pass out. You know, I was just hanging on there still, you know. But during that time, those 2 weeks, it's like I was integrating back into my body. And all of the information that I had gotten from the next side, from the other side, all the truth, all the love, I was trying to remember everything. And I did not want to be here. I remember wanting to be with my family, but not wanting to be on earth, like not wanting to actually be in this vibration. Very nasty, very, it's very, the frequency was just like so low in contrast to the other side. It was just so terrible. And I remember just like having to really anchor myself in the love for my family to be able to be here. Because other than that, oh, I didn't want to hear nothing playing on YouTube. I didn't want to, don't put Instagram, and I just didn't want to have anything to do. I'm like, oh, lies. Like, you just, it's so easy to see how fake people are being. And like now you know what love really is. And then people are doing all these things, not even for love. It was just so much. It was so much to take in. And and so, yeah, I just really didn't want to be here, but I wanted to be with my family. And so it took about 2 weeks for me to just stay in my body and stop, you know, um, being so, I don't know the word to call it, just not tethered, not tethered properly. It took about 2 weeks. But yeah, since then, it's just been a lot of, actually, like right after that, even during those 2 weeks, having such a clear understanding of the words of Yeshua, things in the Bible, like everything was just super clear to me, understanding things in such a different way, and knowing that unless somebody, it's like love is the key. Unless you know what love is, you cannot understand what spirit is saying. Um, and the words that Yeshua is speaking are spiritual words. So if you don't have love, if you don't have that spirit, uh, let's say, as your filter, you're just going to read these words and it's just going to mean to you whatever it's going to mean to you, whether it's your pastor interpreting it or someone interpreting it on TV or whatever the case may be, or you interpreting it from your own pain, you know, because that's really the biggest filter that we have. We interpret a lot of things through our pain. So we need love. Love is the most important thing. We need love in order to be healthy. We need love in order to receive all that we can receive, all the abundance, everything. It comes from love, being properly rooted and grounded in love. And so that's kind of been my message. Since then, it was always there, that message, but now I can really help people with how to love, you know? And yeah, so that's that's what I'm up to.
Thank you so much for sharing. You shared so much. I don't have too much to ask about because you were really, really clear. But so one of the things that just came up for me when you're talking about this, seeing the world through the lens of a person's own pain. What's
Oh,
like something that you can help somebody, let's say somebody's really going through it, you know, like whether they're dealing with something in their life or they're dealing with processing grief or
mm.
something is coming up for them and they just can't see anything through the lens of love. Do you have any tools to help people get past that?
Oh, that's a really good question. See, when you ask that, the first thing that happens in my mind is all the different lenses, you know, all the different lenses. Because pain affects us in different ways, right? Some people go through an experience and the pain, okay, I'll put it this way. All pain is fear of loss of life. Okay. that's a lot to get into, but all pain is the fear of loss of life. So once you realize that your life, your real life can never be lost because you're eternal, um, then the pain kind of dissipates, because the reason why, for example, let's say you've lost a loved one and you're in grief, the why is because you feel you're never going to see that person again. You feel like you don't know where they are. Then, or sometimes what really happens is that when someone passes, when someone transitions, someone else who's still alive is in pain because they never got to say this and that to the person. So then it's regret, right? It's regret. And you see them crying at the funeral, and they're not crying because they're going to miss the mom. They're crying because they regret they never did this and never did that. So once we realize that we are eternal beings and we exist not only in this life, and that others who transition are still can still be aware, if we, especially if we create that love bond, then we know that we can release that pain. We can still communicate love to them. We can also forgive and be forgiven. All of the things that we do here, we can still do, because eternity is not bound by time. And so once you have a sincerity of heart, you can still, all of those actions still count, right? So someone might pass away and you feel regret and you feel sorry, and you could actually say, I'm so sorry that I never loved you right. You can release that. You can, because it counts. It's still, it is energy that you're releasing, and it will be received in the right way and go to its right place, and I think that's really, I can't think of a pain that people experience on this earth, financial pain, all pain. It's because of a fear of loss of life, and people don't realize that they've lived before and they'll live again. This is just one of who knows how many incarnations that we've had. And if we haven't incarnated here, for some people, they haven't had that many, but there's still life, after this life, and life in between life. So, I think if people really meditate on that and really come down to it, like, you're afraid of loss of life, loss of image, the image that you've built for yourself for people to see. You're afraid of that, because if that image crumbles, then you fear losing something of life, your status, your something, and all of that. It's like it's ingrained in the human, let's say, I'll say program, in a sense, to belong and to be a part of. So anything that will happen in our life that will cause us to feel in some way separated from the whole, in some way, that's also the fear of loss of life. So does that make you, am I explaining that?
Yeah, I think you explained it really well. Something came up for me while you were talking about that. Part of our audience is people who have had near-death experiences themselves, and some of them have a really hard time integrating back into the human experience side of it. So they know this eternal love that you're talking of, and they just want to return to it. So what kind of advice would you give somebody who's maybe perceiving a struggle with something like that?
Okay, so here's the thing. If you have returned here, it's because of love. And if you've truly experienced love on the other side, then, and trust me, this is coming from someone who did not, when love brought me back here, but when I was here, I was like, oh shit, I don't want to be here. But I also knew that it wasn't time for my husband and children to leave. So I wanted to be here. And maybe that's the lesson, right? You're here because of love. Think of it, if you're still here, then you know what real love is. You've experienced it. And I understand wanting to, trust me, I understand wanting to stay in it and be in it. I feel so emotional saying this, but the people on this side, they don't know it. You can be a bridge for them to experience that real love. You've come here and you're still here, and you know something they don't know. You felt something that's lost to us with everything going on with technology and the media and all of this stuff. We don't know what love is anymore over here. Now you've got a chance to taste it, to touch it, to feel it. You could remind us, you could remind them, and you've literally returned as a messenger of love, right? And how much greater gift can we give to anybody but to remind them of what love really is, you know? So be grateful that you're here. You know you'll return. Life here, if you've gone to the other side, you know this life here is little. It's a blink. Just be here for the blink and help others to return, to love. It's great. You're blessed to be able to know what it feels like to love, because we've forgotten on this side. So be a messenger of love.
Wow, that is really impactful. Just to think that there's also purpose in the pain of returning, because it
Yeah.
is very painful for a lot
Yeah.
of us to return back
Yes.
to the earth
Oh
experience.
God, yeah.
But there's purpose in that pain too. I've never
Yeah,
thought of it that
yeah,
way. Like, you are
yes.
here to make a way for somebody else. That is so beautiful.
That is it. That is the reason. Yeah, nothing, source doesn't do anything that, like, I know. I know the moment I have a contract. I said, oh, I remember what love is. Send me back so I can love. All I've been doing is teaching people how to love. That's it. Be present when someone is talking to you. Do not think of what's the answer? How am I going to rebuttal this? Stop that. Listen to them, because we're missing each other. Communication is not about the words that we're saying. It's about being able to really understand the energy that the person, like, what are they really saying? Words mess everything up sometimes. So you have to just calm yourself. Yes, it may be an argument, but listen, what am I feeling here? Is she really angry, or is she broken and sad and wanting me to love her and doesn't know how to say that? Because she has a whole bunch of other things she's afraid of, she doesn't know how to say that. So if you aren't busy thinking of, oh, that's what she said, I'm going to respond this way, I'm going to respond that way. Once you let go of that and you're centered and you're just listening to energy, you're listening deeper, then you're loving. Now you're loving. Now you're loving. Now you're going to respond to the real problem. And then the solution is there. Problem solved, arguments over, you have a new best friend, you know? So, and that's like with everything, be present, I always tell people, give your eyes, give your ears, give all of your senses, in that moment, talking to somebody else, just love, everything else anything that you could put on pause is gonna come after.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like very lucky to be talking to a spiritual teacher who is so just like very firm in your teaching, like, this is what you're here to do, and you're expressing yourself so well. And I'm really grateful to have spent this time with you today. And I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you'd like to share to feel more complete about our time together.
Yeah, well, I want to share something that has it's what I'm really focused on with helping people right now. And we could talk about it. I think we'll talk about it another time. But I just want to touch on this, like, whether you want to say God or higher self or source, it really doesn't matter. I mean, God actually doesn't care, what you call God, because all is understood as to why we would choose certain names. Like, come on, right? So, whatever you decide to call, Most High, um, Most High cares very much about your well-being, about your health, especially, and specifically because when we are not healthy, it's more challenging for higher frequencies to be properly integrated into our body. I'm going to say it this way. It's difficult to hold the charge. It's difficult to hold the charge. And so what has been shown to me recently is that we actually have, I want to say there's like a pandemic of brain damage. And that's what was shown to me, that many people, the majority of people have brain damage. And it's because we don't have the technology yet, or it's not known to the common person, that shows you the subtle connections that happen in the brain. And so a lot of us at a certain point in life, many times, and some just once or twice, but from a young age for a lot of people, and then even, going into older age, at some point our brain disconnects or breaks, is what was said to me. Broken brains. We have a lot of broken brains. And so I would say that knowing, whether you want to say higher self or God or whatever, I'm telling you that it is important to Most High that our brains are healed. A lot of people want to do all other type of healings, but it's important that we start there, the healing of the brain, the reconnecting of the left and the right hemispheres. Our brain is actually meant to be one solid operating thing. Like, some people say, oh, I'm right brained, I'm left brained. No, we're actually just supposed to just have it all, is what I'm being shown. And if you just ask, because we have the right to be disconnected and to be connected. We have the right to be sick and to be whole. It is our right. We have the right to be poor and to be rich. So if you just ask, higher self, Most High, God, source, whoever you want to say, you just say, if my brain is damaged or broken in any way, I would like it to be healed. I would like to be whole. And even now, as you're watching this, you can feel, if you ask with a sincere heart, you'll feel a warmth or a heat going through your brain. You can feel it. Sometimes it feels like almost like little sparks happening or tingling, right? That's some of the ways that people experience it. And just allow and relax, just relax and allow and know that this is the will, of Most High, that your brain will be one, that you will no longer be double, minded. And a lot of people, it's like, that's why it's hard for you to manifest anything, because, you can't hold your vision long, let's be real, you can't. And it's because you're disconnected. It's because your brain is broken. And, you don't have to exhibit some sort of, what we think when a person has brain damage, what it looks like. We're actually exhibiting a lot of brain damage. If you want to do something, but you can't even stay committed to what you want to do, something's wrong, and it's time for us to realize that at points in our life, we've broken, our brains have broken, and it's so subtle. And like I said, we don't necessarily have the technology now to show you those connections, whether you want to call them neural pathways or whatever the case is. But the same way we have a subtle body, the brain also has that subtle energy running through. And there were connectors that were there. And so sometimes it's an experience of like something happening that you just can't think through, and you feel like your brain is going to explode. Like you just can't solve the problem. Like you just can't, or like someone upsets you and you just can't deal with them. And it literally feels like your brain is going to just explode. And then something happens. Sometimes you may scream, sometimes you may just, whatever, but then you find yourself on the other side of it, but you're not the same after that. And you may not realize it, but there's been connections that actually popped, that actually disconnected. And that's how it starts. For most of us, it starts when we're really young. Bad families, parents arguing, we're hearing it. We don't want to hear the screams anymore. And in that, we disconnect, it happens all different sorts of ways, not only like physical things like accidents. Actually, emotional trauma does the most brain damage. So that's what Spirit has been talking to me about. Spirit's been saying, just heal the brains, heal the brains, and tell people that if they ask for their brains to be healed, I will heal them. And so, yeah.
Wow, thank you for that. And if you're watching this in real time, you can check out the webinar that we're going to be hosting on IANDS, where we'll be talking more about this. And all of your information will be in the liner notes of this episode so that people can connect with you. And I just want to thank you again for your willingness to serve. We'll see you next time.
No problem. Take care. Thank you for having me.